We're live. We're recording, and I think I'm just waiting for the YouTube.
We are going live on YouTube.
And it looks like the rest of the select board is signing in at the same time. Just give it a second for the YouTube notification.
It's on YouTube.
Okay, perfect. Hey, good evening, everyone. Time is now 6:30. I'm Chairman Mike Curry, and I'd like to call the Select Board Workshop to order on the 6th day of January, 2021. Could everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Need a little bit of that tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to state for the record that not only are we being live streamed on both TCTV Cable Station 8 and our YouTube web platform, but this evening's recording will be available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. Just do a quick roll call for this evening. I can see overwhelmingly that we have our quorum. We've got the whole select board here this evening. We've got our town administrator, Adam Lamontagne. We have our executive assistant, Holly Young. We have our community services director, Jackie Prime, and our DPW director, Bob Sozik. And as always, TCTV in the background, making this whole thing possible. Thank you very much to TCTV. Tim, I saw that you had your hand up. Did you have something real quick?
Yeah, I'm trying to log in off my phone. I think I have it all fixed now.
Okay, perfect. This evening is a workshop, so public participation is possible. However, it's not a normal thing for our workshops. It's an informal setting for us to have in-depth discussions on things that we need to have in-depth discussions on. A couple of Zoom rules of the road. Please use video when possible, especially for the public so they can see you. Use the mute feature when you are not speaking, although the TCTV can place you on mute to help out in case you might have as they say, a hot mic. It is easier for you to control your own mute button. And if you wish to speak, like Tim did, you can use the raise hand feature or just politely break in and you can take the floor. If you wish to see any materials shared on the screen, this evening we're going to be talking about something where we would want to see a map. Please request that of myself. Just ask the chair which document or Google Maps or something like that you feel would be helpful for the discussion, and I can do a screen share to make that possible. This will help everyone stay synchronized and be helpful to the viewing public, and only the chair and the TCTV are able to share contents at this time. And that's all I have for the opening of our meeting. Just going to quickly show our agenda for this evening. As always, the agenda is available on our website, templetonma.gov. You'll see it there on the screen. We have on our agenda this evening the discussions for Boynton library parking, and then some discussions on suggestions about select board policies and procedures, our document, and the possibility of an update for that document. Okay, first up this evening is a discussion on the library parking. Just a quick background on our library parking situation. The town common over the years, certainly since I've been here in town, has been a very successful place for the community to get together. We have many town entities in the town center, around the town common, as well as thriving businesses, a brand new school, historical society. It's a good place to go, whether it's the Jack Frost Festival when it's cold, or the craft fair, mac and cheese fest, whatever other events may be happening on the common when it's warm. With this prosperity and continued increase of business and use, we really need to make sure that we're managing our property as well as we can. So this evening is a part of that process to make sure that from whether it's a parking perspective, intelligence on how things could be in the future, I think it's incumbent upon us to be able to make sure that we're accessing the town, like the library, the businesses, that we have some kind of homeostasis for how we can make sure that all these things are available to the growing number of people that seem to be using these businesses and services. We don't want to shut off anything for the community. So for this evening, I'm looking at a quick memorandum from the town administrator, Adam LaMontagne, and then we have a couple of documents with some pictures that we can at least start the discussion with. This evening, we have our Community Services Director, Jackie Prime, and our DPW Director, Bob Sozik, with us to help along in this discussion and identify any potential problems, or actually, I should say, any existing problems, and then anything that we may, wide view look of everything, any potential solutions for our issues that we may have. So I'm going to turn it over to the town administrator. You can open with the spirit of your memorandum, and let's see where this discussion goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This has been an ongoing issue since the Jackie Prime, our library director, brought this up this past summer, and we've been working to come up with some kind of solution, at least short-term solution to this issue that we've been faced with. Mr. Chairman, if you could just put up the pictures of the parking, not so much the map, but the people are parking up down the road. Now, when we came in here for the public hearing, I think there is some disagreement amongst the department heads between how many spots should be available, the discussion. Then the community was getting involved. And I don't believe it was so much of a united front on that discussion. So what I did is I talked with all the department heads, the police chief, the library director. I have Bob here because Bob will be the one ultimately putting up these signs. So if you could see, Crows, especially in the summertime, gets a lot of people go over there. They park all the way down the road. And unfortunately, what this causes is those spots, you can see those cars right there, 2 to 3 spots, I think, could easily be placed right in front of the library for services and without impeding the operation. But we need to have the support of the police department in order to make this a reality. I want to bring attention to the fact of the map. And at first, if we could pull up the map where the highlighted portion is, Mr. Chairman. And you could see here at first, the discussion was on how much limited parking. It was a 1-hour parking split place they were talking about down here. Then it gets into, well, who was there, who wasn't there. So I think having 3 dedicated spots in that highlighted portion gets us to where the library can actually function. Is it the best solution? No, but it's at least a solution for the time period in order for Jackie and her crew to at least be able to get a spot. And I guess that there's certain times of the day where it's worse than other times. So Jackie's has been working on the operational standpoint, but as our obligation as the town officials, I did want to have this discussion and continue that moving forward as we're coming up with a remedy to this. And we're all stakeholders in this. And quite frankly, as I'm going through the budget this year, it's going to be very, very limited. And when I heard about a study, I think that maybe long term we could look at that, but short term wise, I think we have to come up with something and have that public hearing before we, especially once we get through this COVID, because right now the library is technically not open where people are actually stopping in and everything. So Jackie, if you wanted to provide some more insight for the board and Bob could talk more of how we could get this implemented, that'd be great.
Sure. Those pictures were taken obviously when Crow's was having indoor dining, which they're not right now. It's definitely much better, but with the thought in mind that they will open up to indoor dining again. And I think that the 3 spaces that Adam mentioned, as well as our little cutout lot, will at least give us adequate parking for our patrons in the short term. Long term is a whole different story, but I'm happy that we're looking into this now. We typically have between 10 and 15 patrons visit the library per day. Never usually more than 2 at a time who need to park and come up to the porch to get their materials. In addition, we have a courier that comes every Monday and Wednesday who needs to park and truck in sometimes up to 3 bins of materials. So there's never more than 2 staff people scheduled at any time. So I think those spaces will be more than adequate, particularly right now where Crow's is doing takeout only. So.
Now, Bob, did you want to be able to provide some more information? I know you've already got signs and you've been doing everything, and I know it's got essentially placed on hold for the time being, but this is kind of just to get this kind of moving forward and get us to where we could have the public hearing and to make this, at least in the short term, come up with some kind of solution. Maybe not perfect remedy, but something where at least Jackie can actually function with her crew and patrons.
Yeah, I think it's, first of all, we don't want to discourage any business, any activities, any functions up in that area. We want to welcome them. So we're trying to work and keeping everybody happy. This would be a very temporary fix, because once things open up, like Jackie said, it's going to change quick and fast, and it's going to become another problem real quick. Right now, yes, we can. It's a temporary fix. I do have the signs. I can put them up as soon as you say go. In that area would be 3 spots for the library. The only concern you would have if you had an emergency at the library or one of those houses, an ambulance call or whatever, a fire call, the street would be shut down. Especially if there's a line of cars down there. There's no place for them to go except for shut the street down, which is normal procedures if they have a bad enough call anyways. So, and down the road, I think you got 2 options right across from the library in a good amount of stretch. I'm sure everybody's been up Wellington Road to the right side of the school where they have that diagonal parking. You could do something like that. That'll be probably a cheaper way of creating parking versus taking what property the library has and maybe getting some more property from the church and making a parking lot out in that lawn area, which is going to consist of drainage. It's going to be more detailed and more expensive. The common area, I'm not familiar enough. I don't know if it's historical or you can impinge on it. I mean, that's what the committee needs to do and look into on those 2 options where I think best fit any alternate parking up there.
Thanks, Bob. And I think having this discussion and hearing that at least we're coming up with something for the time being, but whether Crow's goes and talks with the folks across the way using that parking lot and looking for other opportunities to not have such a burden onto the other services the town's looking at going upon moving forward, I think is having this in front of everybody, having the discussion, taking place and taking some kind of action is what we're looking at doing. And having it at this workshop with the select board, this is something that, whether the traffic order be issued or not at a public hearing, I want to leave that to them. But I think it's good that we're bringing this forward again. And to have that, I think last time we came into some competing philosophies and there wasn't a clear remedy to the fix. And it's not a perfect fix, but it's something.
Right. It's a little less. At first cut, I propose a lot more area before the handicap parking and after the handicap parking. But you got to try to work with everybody and try to make a happy medium so everybody can still function and enjoy the center of Templeton.
On a positive note, it's good to see so much activity in the center, but with that comes other challenges, and and it's finding that happy medium. Mr. Chairman, that's all we have. I'm not sure if the members of the board or you had any further questions on this.
Julie, go ahead. Julie, you're on mute. Here you go.
I'm all set. It's just a thought. How are they going to know if it's a library patron parked there?
Bob would put up the signs that just say library parking only. It would be a clear.
So, right. I understand that, but how are they going to know?
If they park there.
When you have 15 cars parked on the same side of the street, how are you going to know if that's an actual library worker or a patron? How are you going to know that when Crows on the Common's open?
Well, that's the thing operationally, and that's why you need the support of the police. But if Jackie has, let's say, nobody in the building and there's people parked there, I mean, it's clear that who are these spots? Why are they parking there? And it's up to the police to enforce. I mean, the select board have the authority to issue the traffic order itself. Bob could put up the signs as long as they're clearly posted. And then there's the support of these departments while working together. It's a matter of enforcement at that point. But that's a good question. So Jackie, Bob, did you want to add anything further to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if there's staffing at the library, they're going to know if it's their patrons visiting the library or across the street. So, I mean, it's going to be obvious to them it's nobody in the library right off the bat. I mean, I think if you're going to do this, I would either send a letter to Crows on the Common and explain what we're doing and working to come up with a better solution in the future. And if you could bear with us and respect those 3 spots dedicated for the library, instead of going in blindsided and upsetting everybody, I would definitely put them on the hook and advise them of what your plan is so we can work together and keep them in the loop.
So when the library is closed, we're not allowing them to park there, are we?
Jackie, I believe,
Once you post it, it's for library use only, even when the library is not open.
well, they still have some kind of hiccup going on. Is that, Jackie, am I accurate with what services you're still providing?
Yeah, I think I think what Julie means is like on a Sunday or.
Right. And how are you going to enforce that? Once the signs are up, they can't park there on a Sunday.
Or we could put up a library parking during normal business hours.
Well, you could also treat it as emergency access fire lane. So they have, if something does happen over the weekend, at least they can pull up in front of the building and it's not blocked.
That's probably a better idea. Just a thought. I was just like, how are you going to enforce it? Like, Really, that's going to be a difficult way. It's going to be difficult to enforce that, I think. I know it's only temporary, but.
Terry?
Yeah, maybe staff parking, library staff parking only, so that would be you could see that it would be a staff parking, and then you could also have pick up and drop off on the sign itself, pick up and drop off.
The signs are gonna work, the signs are gonna work, but if you want a simple fix to that is to add a second part to the sign underneath the no parking and have the hours of operation of the library.
That's a good idea too.
I thought that was probably a good fix for what Julie was bringing up. If you have the hours there, it's like, when I park in Gardner, I know because, it's clear where you can park and when, you don't have to put money in the meter. I would just put the hours there. I don't know if Jackie, if your hours change, so much where that would be impractical to do, but,
No.
Terry, did we address your point?
Yeah, but I like that. I think that's a better solution too.
I do. I think it also lessens the arguments of, it's not open or whatever, and people have a clear understanding. This is for the library when the library has hours.
And it's a good compromise for crows too.
Right, and this is phase one. I mean, like we've been briefed this evening. This is the first part. Because we need something right now, but this is the first part. There's got to be a longer term fix for that. But I do like what's being briefed right now. Jeff, Tim.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is, it's not actually a library parking problem. This is a private business parking problem. At one time, before they reconfigured Baldenville Road, when it was Country Mischief, there was people that were parking on both sides of Baldenville Road.
Yep.
And they even kept trying to do it once they reconfigured it. And it's a dangerous corner, as it is, with nobody parked there. So the solution, what they did was there was no parking on one side of Baldenville Road. Like if you were traveling north on the right, the library side, there was no parking over there. Mm-hmm. You could only park on one side of Baldenville Road. You can still have people, come out from between cars, especially if there's a car going south north and cars are parked on the side of the road. Somebody can come out between cars and that's just something waiting to happen. Again, a lot of this parking is on crows. If you have 100 people seating, they have the area, they have the land. It's a 2.5 acre site.
That's right.
You can pick up the map, plot plan from the assessor's office and see that they have area that goes down parallel with Patriots Road. To get to that, they're going to have to come off of, I believe you'll have to come off of Patriots Road, so they have to deal with the state. And it's not easy, it's not cheap, but they have the area and land for the parking. When they first asked for their license to open up, they said they had parking arrangements for a business down the road that they could park there. They had spots on their, area, and they said they had this parking plan. So a lot of this is on crows. I know there was talk about, between the parsonage and the library, we'd build a parking, a town parking lot there. Why? Because a private business needs more parking? This is on the private business more than it is on the town. And as far as the signage and parking spots on Boynton Road, in the city of Gardner on City Hall Ave, you have the post office, City Hall, and then City Hall Annex. They have diagonal, because they have the width of the street, but they have painted parking space, they have signs, and some of it, a few of them are post office patrons. Some of it is City Hall, and they have the same thing on, I believe it's Pleasant Street, where they have, some of it's very short-term timed parking for post office, for City Hall. I mean, like Bob said, you put up signs, library parking only. And for little money, you can paint parking spots on Boynton Road with the signage for, library, customer. That little paved area where there's a handicap sign, that needs to be upgraded to meet the current ADA standards. I believe it's addressed in the ADA plan that we have in our possession. I believe you have to measure that to see, to line out a van accessible spot, which are required to have when you only have one spot, and see if there's enough room to have an additional regular parking space there, which could accommodate one library employee. And then you could have 3 or 4 spots on Boynton Road for the library, one, employee and then a couple patrons. But whenever they get back to, indoor dining and a lot of customers, you're just going to have all that parking on Boynton Road. And we do need to communicate, talk with Crows that, they're a private business. They have the area, they need to deal with that and create their own parking. They stated at the selectmen's meeting, and Mike, you asked the question about parking, and they said they had arrangements made and they had, a parking plan, worked out. I don't think it's, I don't think it quite went, or they quite followed as what they portrayed they were going to do. But that's my view, is that this is more of a private business issue than it is a town issue. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Jeff.
And
Yeah, I think they're a victim of their own success. I've talked with them. I've used, I've been there. I parked out on Baldwinville Road when I went to Country Mischief. Great breakfast. And, again, great breakfast, but certainly they're doing all food, like you said, Jeff. And their customer base is clearly been much, like I said, they're a victim of their own success. So having that dialogue with them to basically say, what are their options from a business perspective, rather than what we're trying to do tonight, which is, what is the actual problem? You're right. What's forcing this issue for us to be able to say, hey, we need to put up flags to say we need to be able to access services. I think overall, I had started off by talking about how successful the entire common has been. So when we have events, it becomes a parking problem. We have a CERT team come in to be able to do crosswalking, make sure people are protected on 2 busy thoroughfares there. Comprehensively, I'd like to be able to figure out, how do you take care of all of those issues? If we're continually projecting a higher use of the common, whether it's for events or businesses, what can we do from a strategic perspective, not just what we're talking about tonight? I wanted to do a little exercise for what those 3 spaces will look like on the map that's in your agenda, but strategically, what can we do? Not just, Jeff, you mentioned that the property next to the library, not just the small stuff, but to be able to say, how comprehensively can we look at the future to say, we know we're going to have large events. When we want to have successful community events, we go to the common, and people know that. We work with the Lions for their issues. We work with the Friends of Templeton Elders for their events. I think we need to be able to have some kind of summit or a meeting to be able to call the people in and say, what are people thinking? It can't be completely on the town to be able to try and fix these things when it's the community as a whole that wants to be able to have nice events and prosperous businesses in this area.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I think for a large function or a weekend of fairs, I think you'll be utilizing most likely the new elementary school parking lot, because to get a great big volume of vehicles, you really don't have the space to create something in that area for 100 cars.
Right. Yeah, no way.
So I think you'd be focused on using the school parking lot and as well as South Road when there's an event, which will help tremendously over there too.
Bob, so what I'm trying to do right now, if what's proposed is like 3 parking spaces, are my cars here too big? Should I reduce those? Is that the size about how it would be comparatively?
I believe it's 8, isn't it, Bob?
I believe it. Yeah, you can do 8 feet, but where it's parallel parking, normally it's like 10 feet. And the length is, I believe it's like 15 feet.
So, I mean, that's basically the 3 spots, right? Did I do that correctly?
The 3 would be directly in front of the library. The highlighter should have went down a little bit longer.
You can fit 3 where you're going now before you come to the next driveway.
So it would look like that?
Correct.
Okay. Leaving that access way to the handicap parking open.
Right, and like Jeff said, it would have to be measured out. It might be possible you can squeeze an employee car to the right of that handicap parking,
right,
into that parking spot in the square where the handicap is.
Oh, okay.
As long as we have the proper measurements for the handicap van accessible, even if we had to the right of your blue, cut in another 1 or 2 foot, and we could make it work if we had to.
Okay.
But I mean,
that's basically the gist of what we're talking about. Okay. Okay. So, Jeff, how did that sound? The idea to try and bring in, to have like a not a committee, but like a summit where we would invite, we'd have a meeting, a Zoom or something like that, where we would bring the area businesses, the people that run the events or otherwise, and have kind of this open forum to talk about what can we do.
Yes, that would be fine. And also, to Bob's earlier point about the little strip of common there and making diagonal parking. Other than the wells that are on that area, I think it's down south towards the parsonage and stuff, but I know there's some wells in there. And at one time, the town was asked if they were going to get rid of them, and there was an uproar. I have the deed stuff for the common areas there, and it's in old script writing that I'm trying to read, because I think in here and in front of the of Crow's, I think there's some kind of deed restriction on here, but I'm not sure. I know in front of the fire station there is for sure.
Yeah.
But like I said, I have the deed stuff, but it's in, it's all written out longhand in script, and I'm doing my best to try to read through it and to see.
Yeah.
Because
Jeff, when you were talking about the slanted or not the parallel parking, but the slanted parking, you were talking about possibly that being in this area.
Yeah, that strip of common that goes right up by past the library.
Yeah, that's it.
And,
Yes.
Yeah, and because, you know,
Right.
Bob had mentioned that, you know, thought about maybe some kind of diagonal parking. And I think
Yeah.
Carter had mentioned something, you know, about
He
trying to
did.
do that. But I think there's, on that strip of common, and like I said, I have the deed paperwork that I'm trying to read through to see if I can find any kind of restriction. Because when all this little pieces of land way back when was given to the town, the piece in front of the first church where the gazebo is, that was just given free and clear. In front of the fire station, it was given to the town, but it belongs to some group to oversee it.
Yeah.
There's probably ways to go to court, find out the heirs, if any living relatives or anything of the people who donated this, and you know, see if they would sign off on just giving it to the town free and clear. But again, that's a process, which I think we should do for the long term for all of the common area, just to get it cleaned up so it actually does belong to the town free and clear for a lot of these events that we do.
Yeah.
And things that, you know, people want to make happen on the common, including improving them, you know, more trees, things like that.
Okay.
Again, one time we had a common improvement committee, but no funding, and it was a lot of talk for a few years, and then it was dissolved because nothing was happening. But so that's the other thing that I'm doing, trying to read up on that and see before we say, hey, we could do this. I'm trying to read through that deed material to find any restrictions that there may be, because I know on some pieces there are some.
Bob, if there wasn't a deed restriction, is diagonal parking in that strip feasible?
Absolutely. I think I kind of half-assed marked it out. I think you could get about 20, 25 cars there before you came to the first well.
Yep.
If you, satellite picture, if you saw some disturbance in the middle of the lawn, that would be where the first well is, which we last year recently exposed and put a cement cover over, a little more down. Right. I'm trying to point. Yeah, right there. That's where the first well is.
Aha. Okay. I didn't know that. I think we mentioned it in our meeting, but I didn't realize it.
So
it's a
from
functioning
there,
well. It's a functioning well or an old well.
I don't know much history on it, Mike. It's not a functioning well, no.
Okay.
Mr.
It's
Chairman,
more of a hazard. I think there's 2 or 3 of them further up towards the minister's residence up there. Between that one, I think there's 3 altogether.
Interesting. Okay. Tim, I think you were trying to break in.
yeah, when you had that map up, just to the right of the crosswalks, right in front of the parsonage, there is another well. There's a larger concrete pad and cover.
Right, further up that way.
No, go closer to the crosswalk, and it's in the trees. Move it
Oh, it is.
to your right. The way.
Did I go the right way, Tim?
No, you're off to the other side.
Oh, this way?
Oh,
Yeah, go. Right across from that crosswalk, Mike.
yeah, just a little, yeah, right in that general area. It's kind of buried in those trees.
Okay. All right.
So that's where we're really at. This is obviously phase 1. A lot of this is going to come down to communication, whether, like Julie mentioned, the enforcement aspect, Jeff's point, notifying the business, so that gives them time to look for alternate parking spaces or for their residents. Because I think, to Mike's point, in the sense of this business has been so successful and so many people are going there, it's kind of led to their own challenge with this whole parking situation. I know they have great food and everything. I know a lot of people want to go there, but it leads to other challenges and obstacles, if you will, for other services the town needs to provide. And this at least gets us some spaces for Jackie and her folks that go over to the library. They did a great job with that roof. There's a lot of good activity going on. I think there was just so many obstacles last time we did this. So we have consensus to move forward by March or April on doing the public hearing and the traffic order. We could get that first portion done. In the meantime, get the communication done. I'll write the letter to Crows and take it from there, one step at a time. But at least we're getting some things squared away, one step at a time.
Well, to the rest of my, go ahead, Julie.
Just a quick question for Bob. Any idea what the cost factor is if you do use some of that grassy area to put parking? Because once again, I'm thinking if the town looks at that financially, are we actually helping Crows? I mean, because that's who's going to park there when there's no events.
Well, I think
We're basically going to build them a parking spot.
Well,
I mean, it's public parking. I mean, a lot of municipalities wind up having, public parking, but you're right. It's definitely because there's an increase in parking. I'm sorry, Bob, I'll let you answer.
Like Mike said and Jeff said, I mean, if we show Crows in the town that we're trying to create more parking for all uses, and if Crows can come up with something to maybe put behind their establishment to help out with their expected customers, so we're showing we're working together, because the common is used for various things. Yes, we have the school. Yes, we have people that get there first and going to assume those closer spots. Cost-wise, I mean, if the DPW helped out, we could save a great amount of cost of digging the subsoil out and getting some bony gravel in there. Then you definitely want to do a curb set and paving. I think you're probably looking $40,000+.
And that's
Thanks, Bob. I was just curious.
And that's why I think before, I don't want us to jump too far ahead, only because I think getting it till we get the spots for now in this phase one, at least we're getting something done. It's better than the situation where there was no spots. Jackie, from the pictures you've sent and what times I've drove by the area, they couldn't even get in. So at least this gives them something to work with. Without the town, outside of just putting up the spots and maybe some lines, whatever Bob needs to do, which is very, very limited expenses for the town. And my letter.
Like I say, I do have the signs and the posts and the hardware. I would have to, if you looking to post the hours of operation of the library, that I would have to order, and I could have them expedite that for a faster turnaround. We can get them up if that's what you choose to do.
I do like the idea of putting the hours on there. I think it sets expectations for people parking. And just quickly, when I think about the people that could benefit by us keep creating municipal parking in there, you've got the new realty group that went into the store. You've got the salon that's next door. You have Crows, the Historical Society. I know it's a little bit up the road, but the antique shop. You have First Congregational. You have the church there that would prosper by having additional parking. And that's just the everyday 365 customers. Not to say the events that we wind up having all throughout the year.
Right,
Terry, go ahead.
Mac and Cheese Fest, the CERT team, they park on the grass. So, and the other thing I was wondering is, we own part of Crow's yard, and not that I know Carter said, oh, down the line they could buy it. I don't know if it would obstruct traffic, the vision, the sight of 2A and Baldwinville Road right in there. But I mean, I'm all for helping businesses. I mean, if we could sell it to them for $1, that would be nice. Sell them that little plot and then help them out with the parking, and win-win.
Well, we wouldn't be able to do that. We have limited by procurement, and we would have to go out for a formal process on that. And whoever, if we could, within, like I think Jeff mentioned, whether or not there is a deed restriction, then we would go through the process like we did with the elementary school,
Right.
and going out to bid, and whoever bids, and that's the most, or the town, highest amount, whenever you get rid of something, it's whoever bids the highest, would then get that in the formal process. You can't just say, we will sell this to you for $1.
Right. And right now that title search is free. I was waiting for Jeff to laugh at that, because I think he's doing the title search pro bono, right, Jeff?
Yes.
But I'm glad that he's doing it, because I've seen some of those old documents, and he's reading some. It may as well be Greek.
Yeah, I believe
Language.
we brought this up before, and I believe there is a deed restriction on that corner of some sort. So
It's only the inhabitants.
something to do with the inhabitants.
I do like the idea of the hours on there, but if you're looking for consensus, Adam, I'll start off by saying I think that this is a good way forward for establishing, of the footprint for the library, to make sure that we have adequate spots for Jackie to not only conduct business, but to have customers that feel like it's open. They're not going to be fighting for to try and get a space or otherwise. So I think this is a good thing. You've got my consensus. I'll let the rest of the board speak to that.
I agree as well. You have my vote on that.
First
It's
step.
a good start.
Thank you, Holly. If we could just put a note into the April agenda to have the public hearing for the traffic order. I think that's what I'm hearing from the board. And obviously, I'll have to send a letter to Crows, but after that.
Yeah, and Adam, tell them what we're thinking about. We want to be able to talk to the stakeholders in this and think from a strategic perspective, because we would like everybody to be prosperous. Not just the businesses, but also, making sure that all of the people in that area are actually doing well and thriving and have places to park for it.
Just another thing that while we're all thinking about this as the next phase comes up, I mean, I would be big and against, you don't want to ruin, you want to keep the landscape, you want to keep the aesthetics, you don't want to make it you don't want it to look like a Walmart parking lot, you want it to look like Templeton Center.
Right. Agreed. And probably people watching this evening would probably be thinking the same thing, quoting, I think it's the Joni Mitchell song, Pay Paradise, put up a parking lot.
I share that sentiment with Bob, though, too. How do you maintain the aesthetic?
Well, it's something like I'm talking about, doing a diagonal parking, not going real crazy, but you're not going to create enough spots to handle everything there. We're going to use the school and create additional parking. Anything's going to help. And if Crows decides to put something in and help relieve some of that, that'll be a help to us and them as well.
Okay. Does that help, Jackie? Okay. All right. I think we can move on. Jeff or Tim, I didn't hear any last words or otherwise, but if we're ready to move on, we can. Jackie and Bob, you're welcome to talk about this riveting subject of our select board policy book. But okay, well, have a great evening.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Bob.
Thanks,
You're welcome.
thanks, Jackie.
Bye-bye.
Right.
All right. Next thing on our agenda this evening is some possible updates or recommendations to the select board policies and procedures. Adam and Holly, I'm going to go ahead and let you take this. I've got plenty of notes and ready to have a discussion recommendation by recommendation. And I can put up anything on the screen that you want. Just let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we did is Holly brought up some areas that she had some concerns with. The select board goals, obviously, one of it's updating the policies and procedures. Whatever we crossed out as a final, just what Holly was able to find by going through. And obviously, the intention here is more so, because what gets me going and going through a couple of the budgets myself, we have that workshop. The budget workshop, which I think is a good thing if utilized. I know members participate. The ones that are there, they get to ask the department heads questions. They get most of their questions answered. But what troubles me about the process, and I say troubles in the sense of not everybody takes advantage of that opportunity to go to the meeting and ask the questions. There's times when I was there and we would get bombarded with 50 questions after the budget workshop. That I find troubling. And I use the word troubling in the sense of I want to create efficiency, but I don't want to have to go over questions that have already been answered at a workshop because somebody doesn't take advantage. And I don't want to say any names because it's irrelevant. It's more of the process and the policies we have in place. The objective I'm looking at is, in the sense of these workshops, we have a budget, and I believe those workshops work for those. But
I got you, Adam. But I mean, do you want to take them one by one? Because it's, I mean, overall, that's not the overall theme of your recommendations from reading these.
Yeah, but I just wanted to kind of start off with that.
Okay.
My mind's
You're giving us a sneak preview.
Yeah, and my mind's in budget season, so I'm kind of going there. But let's one-on-one through them. Holly, did you want to add anything before we start?
No, if you want to just go through them and I can answer questions or.
Okay. Okay, let's start. Another thing why we had to go through this, everything was mentioned selectmen, so we have to update to select board anyways.
Oh, yeah.
So if we could pull it up, the first one on here is the
Do you want me to pull it up, or do you just want to talk through these?
You can pull them up.
Okay.
If it's easily accessible.
Are you kidding me? I'm a wizard with these things.
You are pretty good with technology.
All right, you should see the memo on the screen. For anyone following along, all you have to do is go to the town website and pull down the agenda. And not only are you going to see the recommendations made, but then in the back part of the agenda, you'll wind up having the actual select board policy with the markup. If you get the online version, you'll see the colors, which is going to be important. But if you see the markup, you can follow along as this memo describes where it is in the policy and then what the recommended change is. So go ahead, Adam.
Okay, so if we take these one by one, anybody has objections, please bring them up and we will take them. And if people believe it should be changed, then we'll change that. So clerk for the board voting and officers.
All right, so you're basically just recommending that we remove the clerk position from the select board. I did look in chapter 41 in our own bylaws for if there's any necessity for the construction and makeup of a select board. Jeff, I know you're very good at researching. I didn't see anything in either of those, the bylaws and then the Mass General laws for the necessity to have a clerk. But I would say if we do have a discussion where we would remove it, I would not make that until effective the fiscal year for 2022.
Oh yeah, none of these are going to be done right away. I just want to kind of put these on the eyes of the board.
Yep. Any other comments? Number one.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Yeah,
Please, Jeff, go ahead.
I did look several things. I looked through the Selectmen's Handbook. I looked through the Mass General laws, and I could not find anything specific to a clerk. I contacted the Massachusetts Selectmen's Association, and I got an email that there is, to the knowledge of this individual, there is not a formal legal requirement for the clerk position on the board. I contacted the Attorney General's Office, Division of Open Government, regarding the open meeting law. She can come up with any legal requirement other than she did remind me that a board of selectmen must approve minutes in a certain time period. And my thought on this is it should be a member of the board signing off on approved minutes for the Board of Selectmen. If it's tradition, I think it's less confusing. I also went and looked at comparison towns. Winchington has no clerk. Townsend, Shirley, Orange, Montague all have a clerk. The town of Munson, they have members listed, but no one is designated as a chair, a vice chair, or a clerk. Air had a clerk. Athol shows only a chair only, and Ashburnham has a clerk as well. So, I could not find a legal requirement for us to have it, but my far-thinking thought is with remote participation, you have to have someone, either the chair or an acting chair, physically at the meeting. So if you're away, if we were in like normal meeting and you were away and you're going to participate remote, you can't act as the chair according to the law. And if the vice chair, I don't know, was on vacation, so you got three selectmen there, who is gonna, I suppose they could have a vote, but if you have a clerk, you would have a order of succession that, hey, okay, remote participation, we got three of us here and we got the chair, so the clerk would be the acting chair for the meeting to meet the legal requirement of there has to be a chair or acting chair physically present at the meeting place. And again, that's thinking ahead probably a year away, the way things are going, before we'll probably be meeting in the meeting house. So that is what I found. I was hoping and I thought I would find a legal requirement or certainly something in the Selectmen's Handbook, but I did not. All I found was tradition, customs. Majority of our comparison communities that we use all have clerks. And I personally believe that it should be a member of the board signing off on approved minutes. It used to, the clerk of the Board of Selectmen used to actually sign off on on the minutes. You can go back and you can go to the clerk's office, town clerk's office, and pull up. She's still got some binders out there on a shelf of old selectmen's minutes, and you can find them. And they were actually signed by the clerk of the board. Pre-2010 open meeting law update and everything, but and even past that, I'd have to go back and look to see when it just kind of just went by the wayside. But and the clerk used to always be responsible for signing off on all the licenses and stuff, rather than the whole board. But and sometimes when there was one signature required, it would be the clerk, unless it specified the CEO, and that was the chair's job. So
Right.
That's what I found.
Okay. Terry, did you have something?
My consideration was what Jeff said, the line of succession. If the chair and the vice chair, something happened, who would be next in line? I read something in the policy about a longest member of the select board, but again, line of succession. They have it in our federal government, so a threefold cord isn't easily broken, and it makes sense to me for some things. For others, I think we could change some of the policy, but maybe keep the clerk as far as the line of succession goes, but change other things.
Okay. Yep, and this does tie to at least one other thing in these recommendations, so we'll wind up circling back to it to see how it figures in the rest of the recommendations. Okay, thank you, Terry. Okay, let's move on to the second recommendation. Go ahead, Adam.
Propose eliminating the presentation of quarterly reports if the board still wants the staff to draft quarterly reports, even though they do weekly reports. They can be submitted to the town administrator. He or I can forward to the board with any questions coming to Adam to get answers from the staff. The objective of this one was basically, right now all the department heads, including our office, me, we all do weekly reports. So when we do these quarterly reports, what you're seeing a lot of is everything that was already put in the weekly reports kind of going into these quarterly reports. And we're trying to eliminate duplication of services. I understand where the board could want to have the department heads show up and present, but understanding that they're already doing these weeklies here every week, it just becomes a matter of them coming out and going through their old weeklies and putting a lot of those same materials. Maybe they all don't do it that way, but it's just a matter of them putting that and just having another report due to the board.
Okay, so I guess I have two questions. Number one, is it a requirement? And then the second question is, what would we be missing? What data requirements or otherwise would we be missing between a weekly report and in my mind, if you don't have a quarterly report, then you're just reverting to an annual report. So what's the in between? I know when the police give their quarterly report, I get a compilation of data. I get numbers. I get the amount of arrests, and otherwise, I get comprehensive data rather than just what was going on that week. So I'm mindful of the things that we would lose if we did not have a quarterly report. I understand. I mean, those meetings definitely go long. A lot of it is duplicitous. You could have already heard that in a weekly report, or otherwise, in many cases, like Bob Sozik's, he's just rehashing the same stuff that he has in his weekly report. So I'd want to be able to understand that before we. I'd be on the fence, I guess.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be a quarterly report. It could be twice a year. I'm just saying, if you want to have certain data, there's a lot within the budget materials. I'm trying to do the most and try to figure out that fine balance.
Yeah.
Same token,
Well, I mean-
I don't want to make a decision where I'm cutting off the board. If the board wants to have quarterly reports, they could say keep it in there, and I'll be like, okay. But that's why I wanted to have this discussion.
Yeah, I understand. And, we have, I think the board has a good understanding of that. We read the reports or otherwise. I like when Will Springs brings up the fact that not everybody in the community consumes data the same way. So if we have people in this community that, they do watch our meetings, they're watching it on live TV now or otherwise, are they getting their tax money's worth and understanding what's going on in the community because they're getting their data that way? Like they're looking forward to what they're hearing, what specifically they're hearing in that. When like Luann and Laurie's briefings, they're giving you an indication of where they're at in their cycle or otherwise. If we're getting that, if you're basically saying, yeah, Mike, we're getting that in our weekly, then I would wind up saying putting the quarterly reports on the chopping block would be a good idea. But I'm curious to see what the rest of the board feels. But those are my quick thoughts on that.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Jeff.
To your first point or question, as far as these quarterly reports mandated, well, yes, they are. In the town financial management policy on page 22, monthly and quarterly reporting. The town's financial team, accountant, treasurer, collector, principal assessor shall make a formal public presentation to the board and the status of accounts, their activities, concerns, over negative trends each month following the end of a fiscal year quarter. There is also Department of or Division of Local Services Technical Assistance Bureau best practices, which is, as I read up, the financial management policy that's in place now was put together by the Collins Institute, and a lot of it, or most of it, if not all of it, is following the best practices of issued and recommended by the Division of Local Services. There is a Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 58, that says the accountant must make at least a monthly report. And those best practices, mandated by law to make a monthly report. It doesn't say quarterly, but taking that forward and getting a quarterly report, especially like you can track your revenue and any appropriation, possible deficits or getting tight, or when you approach the fourth quarter, as you alluded to, as far as getting good information or data, you get a better picture of what may be approaching you in the fourth quarter. If you need to make adjustments, that's where Board of Selectmen Advisory Committee can make end of the year transfers, or you get, on the flip side, you have a good idea, you're going to have department leftovers and the revenue is ahead. So that's free cash, and you can start doing your long-term financial planning for the next fiscal year. It gives us, the decision makers, better information, better data, to be better prepared and aware of the financial trends of the town. And this year, fiscal 21, and probably fiscal 22, that's important as far as where revenues are going and, up, down, how expenses are working out. So it's, and again, it gives accountability and transparency to the people who pay the bills, the taxpayers. There's 4 quarters in a year. unless maybe Common Core math, maybe you come up with 5, I don't know. But that's 4 meetings that they have to make. And as far as the weeklies, this afternoon I went back and looked at the weekly reports, July through September, which is just a quarter. On a July 9th report, fire EMS, nothing reported. July 16th, accountant, town clerk, fire EMS, TCTV, nothing reported. July 23rd, accountant, police, no report. July 30th, accountant, treasurer, out of office, sewer, no report, fire EMS, no report. August 6th, accountant, no report, assessor, out of office, town clerk, police, fire EMS, no report. So all departments do not always report every week. The first, to go back a little bit, the first operating policies and procedures that the Board of Selectmen had, I brought them forward back in 2012, but in it, the agenda was laid out, those weekly administrator reports was given to the board by the administrator at a Board of Selectmen meeting. And it wasn't necessarily just, what departments were doing, but it was important things that were going on in between selectmen meetings. Be it, financial, employment, projects, meetings coming up, et cetera, et cetera. So again, it's 4 meetings a month. I believe the people that were hired were either hired and this stuff was already going on, or when they were hired, they should have been made aware that this was part of their duties, their job, to show up to 4 meetings, to give the taxpayers, the people who pay the bills, an accounting of their money. And it helps us making decisions and policies on things to have a good idea and a good picture of what's going on, especially on the finance side. And that's my 6 cents worth.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Terry?
That means I get to add 2 more to the 6. I just wanted to thank Select Board Member Bennett for his thoroughness, and I concur that there's a structure to the quarterly reports that's different from the weekly reports that does give us more information. So I'm in favor of keeping that.
You know what I would say to the structure, Terry, and I thought of this when Jeff was talking. This recommendation is trying to, streamline, give some efficiency, reduce workload. I get that part of it. I'm wondering if we could provide some structure, or town administrator suggests structure to these reports, so they don't become cumbersome. You can basically put them in a box to say, these are the data points that we would normally want with these things. Every time the police and fire come in front of us, we have an expectation of how many calls you have. So if maybe we could put some structure, as Terry used the word, to be able to make sure that they're not so cumbersome, or they don't go on. They don't go on, and we don't wind up having, like an hour and a half of quarterly reports, as they're referred to as presentations in the policy book. Tim or Julie?
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Tim.
Go right ahead.
I do have to agree with Mr. Bennett that I see a lot of weekly reports, and I see department heads that don't do them. There's either no activity, or they're just not getting to it for whatever reason. But there is a lot of that with departments. I also agree that we should see a financial quarterly report. We should know who's working on their budgets, who's staying in their budgets, that kind of thing. But do we just have, should it be one person that's putting that quarterly report together and presenting it to the Board of Selectmen? Or should it be every department head? Obvious, in my thought, I'm thinking it should be our accountant. I mean, basically, the numbers should be there. Police are within their budget this quarter. Everything looks good, right on schedule, fire, EMS. You know what I mean? One person maybe give that full quarterly report for all department heads in the town and financially tell us how everything is going. But I do agree that the public looks for, and I did, when I first came on the board, I was adamant that I felt like there were certain department heads and certain seasons that we should see those department heads at a select board meeting. They should be there and they should be answering questions for the public. It shouldn't have to go through just the select board members. They need to be visible. I always felt that way. I mean, at some point they need to be visible and available to the public for questions and answers. I have to agree with that because it's not always easy to get that. You don't always see that.
So, Julie, just on just a quick thing about one of your points. It doesn't have to be a regurgitation of information. Like the accountant doesn't need to come in here and say, "Here's everything I've been doing for the entire quarter." I think we could wind up working with that financial team to say, what are the thresholds? We want to hear good news and we want to hear bad news if there is any. But they certainly don't have to say, the supplies in the assessor's office are at 33%. We don't need that kind of report. So the more we talk about it, the more I feel like they're useful, but I'm wondering if we can help the department heads streamline them for the type of data that we want to see in there, rather than leave it to themselves to say, I don't know what they want to know.
No, I totally agree with that.
Tim?
Yeah, to the points of all the speakers before, yes. I'm not so sure. Framing it is a good idea. Actually telling them what to put in there, I don't think is a good idea. They're department heads for a reason. And I think they have the latitude and the flexibility. Share with us what needs to be shared. I do like to have an idea, kind of a, where are we at, State of the Union, whatever we want to call it. And figure out where we're at, what's going on. A major piece of equipment goes down. We have a problem with a building. That would be very important to share with not only us, but the townsfolk as well. So we know where some of the expenditures are going.
Great. Thank you, Tim.
Yep.
Okay, Adam, let's move on to number 3.
This would be, no, is it?
Go ahead.
Am I good? Okay. This one would be for the workshops section. Now, this is more for, well, at least what I'm looking at, when we're not in budget season, these workshops, I mean, it's nice to see everybody, but at the end of the day, and I think Mr. Bennett's brought up quite a few times where taking formal action in workshops, I mean, I think we're probably better off just outside of the budget season. I know this memorandum speaks of removing budget workshops, but I do want to say, I think workshops for budget purposes serves a purpose that, if used correctly, works. I think having workshops, and not being able to take action, I find to be something that could be removed, and we could take up things at the regular order or just have a discussion at the business meeting. And if, let's say somebody wants to take action, at least we have that alternative to do so. That was kind of where I was coming from. We do have meetings, eliminating some workshops in the months and cutting down on meetings where, like if I didn't add these policy changes to this meeting, we would have had a 1-item workshop.
Okay, I understand. We've got 3 types of meetings. We have a regular business meeting, a workshop, and a special. your proposal is to basically do away with that workshop per month. We have one, I forget what the frequency is, but basically removing that workshop, which would reduce us down to 2 business meetings. My question or my concern would be, do we lose the functionality? The workshops give us some informalness and to sometimes talk through, using a wargaming type of discussion like we're doing right now. Do we wind up losing something as a board if we lose that type of functionality? Or do we as a board agree that we just wind up leveraging the special meeting to say, hey, we need to have a breakout on this, or there's something that we need to discuss in depth, and it's going to make, and we can't have it in a regular business meeting because some of those already go too long as it is. So if we can preserve, what we're doing right now by utilizing special meetings, then I would be okay with doing away with the workshop.
I agree, Mike. That was well stated. I think that, yeah, I would agree with doing away, but actually using the special meetings when we needed to.
Thank you, Julie.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Jeff.
Okay, if we want to eliminate the workshop meetings and do stuff at regular meetings, then I believe on page 14 under business meetings, where it says business meeting held on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday each month, excepting July, August, and December, which will have only one meeting, generally consisting of appointments, administrative actions, poll, alcohol, auto license, and the like, and policy matters ready for action. So if we're going to do away with workshops and just have special meetings whenever we think, we might need one, then we should be meeting those 3 months. We should be having 2 meetings per month. So we meet 24 times a year, planned, and then plus whatever extra meetings we have to do, the budget workshop and any special meetings we may want to have. It seems the goal here with all of these changes is to do less. Not so, and call it efficiency. But we're going to give less time to do our work, the Board of Selectmen's work and responsibilities, and give less time to the people to do their business, less accountability and less transparency. If I go down the list, that was my first couple thoughts that popped into my head when I read through all these proposed changes. It's to do less accountability, less transparency, more behind the scenes stuff. You got questions on something? Email. Why not have this stuff in the public domain? It's public business. The people should be able to see it. That's my thoughts on most of this, except the last 3 things, which I totally agree with, because they're kind of useless, surveys and the like. But if you want to do away with workshops and do more stuff at regular meetings, then increase our regular meetings so we have more opportunity to do the things at a regular meeting or a special meeting that we normally do in a workshop. That's how I feel on this one.
Adam, you had some rebuttal?
No, I was just going to bring up the fact that by eliminating the workshops, it just add more of a workload to our business meetings, or if we were to call a special meeting. I don't think there's anything here to try to take less information away from the public. I just think that we will have more information and everything going out in the sense of those business meetings, as opposed to having a workshop or a 1-item workshop here, maybe a 2-item workshop there, and talking about an item where we could just put it all into one and put it on an agenda and get it out that way. But that's my standpoint.
Yeah. I'm with Jeff. I don't mind doing away with the workshops, but I think that we need to be able to add back those business meetings that are specified on page 14. And if we need to rearrange 1 month to make it more friendly for people to figure out how they're going to do their vacation, because that's one of the reasons behind it, then we can do that. But I agree with Jeff that if we get rid of the workshops, then we've got to make sure that we have a very good backbone of business meetings to rely on.
So we would strike, excuse me, sorry. So we would strike accepting July, August, and December, which will only have one meeting.
I would strike that, but I would add, I would basically hit the tennis ball back over to you and Holly to say, now that you get, at least from where we are in this discussion right now with, only Mike and Jeff has commented on it. From where we are right now, if you want to preserve that flexibility in a summer month, come back to us with a way to do that when you know that we're trying to still meet to do the King's business.
And I think it would be easier to understand the select board meets the second, fourth Wednesday of each month.
Or if you need to rearrange that in a month to basically preserve some kind of, hey, that's the opportune time for people to take. What I guess we're saying is we want to meet twice a month. We can do away with the workshops, but we want to meet twice a month. Figure out how you can do, even if you need to write it in there about vacations and otherwise, because I believe that's the reasoning behind that. But again, that's just Jeff and Mike so far.
Mr. Chair, my question would be, would the public have more access to our time if we did away with the workshops and added an extra meeting?
Right now, it appears to me, Terry, that they are getting more access to us because they do not have access to us at a workshop. They just basically getting situational awareness for things that we're working on.
So in a way, they win, which should be a win-win, because if they
you can see it like that.
And I think it would provide better consistency where the public would know they meet the second and fourth Wednesday of each month.
Okay. Any other thoughts before we move on? Holly, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I've noticed in the past couple of years with not having that meeting in December, July, and August, that can sometimes be a problem with people trying to get things on the agenda where you have that space that they have to wait. So that might be a really good option to put those back in.
Okay. We're definitely crafting this one. I think we're, very useful. Thanks for that, Holly. All right, Adam. So the way we're moving on that is removing workshops, but adding back the select board meetings. And if you need to come back again and tweak something with some, if it's a vacation flexibility thing, we'll listen to it. But I think how Jeff and I described it, I think that's the way that we like to move forward with.
Okay. Next one. This is the appointments policy to make it more efficient for appointees and for Holly. The majority of appointees want to be reappointed but don't always get back to her, so it would save a lot of time and effort. Appointees may resign at any time.
You want me to speak on this one, Adam?
Yes, please.
Okay. So a couple of years ago, one of our board members really wanted to hear back from people that's confirming that they wanted to be reappointed. So that's kind of the direction I went with it. But what I found with that is that most people, I'd say 98% of the people on committees want to be reappointed and just stay on until they decide otherwise. But it's another thing to actually get them to answer me in an email that yes, they want to be reappointed. I know there's some other towns that like this where you're appointed until you resign. And if it came up that, there wasn't an open position and somebody wanted to apply when somebody was up to be reappointed and they were more qualified, there might be a little bit of a contest there. But with our lack of participation, sometimes I don't really see that happening. So I just think it would be a lot more efficient and easier for people to stay on until they want to be off, and easier for me to handle the appointments and keep them updated for you too.
It's kind of like enduring an appointment. I guess my first and only question is, does it violate anything in our bylaws? Because we do have specified appointment procedures. I understand what you're saying. I just want to make sure that we're not, if we were to do that, which I agree, I think enduring an appointment could be useful. I just want to make sure that we're not trumping anything else. That's all I have to say.
I don't believe so, but I can double check on that. The only committee that this would be troublesome with, and I would just keep an eye on it, is cultural, where they can do 2 terms of 3 years and then they have to be off for a year. So I would just keep an eye on that, and then we would do that kind of separately.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please go ahead, Jeff.
I looked at this and I thought, well, yeah, kind of maybe. But then on the flip side, when it comes to appointments, and Holly just mentioned participation sometimes is tough to get people to join or to volunteer. Sometimes they volunteer and then they're gone before they even meet, like the EDIC.
Yep.
So in thinking that way, my thought is, if you want to be appointed to a committee or commission, board, whatever, or you want to be reappointed to any entity, to any, then they should show that you're committed or that you will be by taking the time to fill out the paperwork, just like someone would do if they're volunteering for the first time. Fill out the paperwork, let the board and that committee, board entity know that you're interested, and attend the meeting where those appointments will take place. Again, taxpayers will get to see who you are. Oh, I know him. That's my neighbor. When I want something from conservation, I know who to talk to now. Oh, I know them. I'm going to go to that meeting. I call it rubber stamping by assuming that they're on there. Well, we'll just keep appointing them. And again, this leads, my thought is accountability and transparency in governance, which is lacking across the board, local, state, you name it. So I just think if you want to be on something, you should be willing to take, and if you're going to be committed and show up, then it's not that big of a deal to, go online or call up and say, hey, can you mail me, or can I pick this form up? I'll fill it out. Here's my stuff. When do I have to be there to be appointed? I want the Board of Selectmen to know, I want the people to know that I'm volunteering for this. And that's why I think it's a good thing for people to actually have to put a little effort into it. I get there's some people that, they volunteer and they just, every time their term is up, they say, yeah, I want to be on again. Yeah, I want to go again. Well, if you do, then take the 5 minutes, fill the thing out, come to a meeting, because you're going to have to go to a meeting anyway. So what's one more? If you're committed to serving on whatever you're going to serve, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. So that's my 4 cents. So Terry can add 6 cents to get it done.
Here we go. And rub two dimes together, and what do you get? And I was thinking about what it looked like. So when people do fill out the paperwork, sometimes when we vote on it in a meeting, they're not there, they're not present, and they're appointed anyway. So I can see the logic in streamlining it, make them fill out the paperwork originally, but then over the long haul. So what I'm trying to phrase too is it's a term, a 3-year term. From this year to when we say we vote to appoint, it's usually for a 3-year term or a 1-year term. How does that change if we adopt a new policy is kind of where I'm going with that. Is it just a never-ending term? Do we eliminate all terms? Is there certain positions that shouldn't have a 1-year term or should? And is anybody following me on that? Do you see what I'm saying?
I believe the process would just follow the way it has been. I mean, on certain terms, the policy would just be where Holly outlines and here that if she doesn't hear back from them, so persons appointed shall be reappointed until they have resigned. And if another qualified candidate has not applied for the appointed position.
Would that also promote the old boy network where people just feel like, oh, hey, I'm in. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to just do my thing and with my friends. And, we want to promote transparency, but we also want to promote accountability. And we don't want to set ourselves up where we get these cliques or niches that just go on forever. It's always nice to get competition and new ideas.
Yeah, Terry, I think the terms would stay the same because a lot of them are, created by a bylaw with that term set. And what would happen is the 3-year term, when someone's reappointed, if somebody else wanted to be appointed, then there would be some competition there. So that would kind of prevent the old boy network we were talking about as well.
So so Holly, if like Jeff was describing, if they're not taking an active role in getting reappointed, we're basically looking at everything's going through you to be able to try and herd the cats, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So what helps you better? Let them drop off if they're not going to contact you or provide any feedback that they want to be reappointed, or like we're saying in this proposed recommendation, to basically say you're automatically going to get reappointed if we don't hear from this, as an assumption, like what do I call it, an enduring appointment. Which one? I kind of think maybe I know what your answer is, but would it help if you just let them drop off if they're not going to provide any feedback?
I don't think it would, because that's how we're doing it now. And I have people that just don't answer me. And finally, I'm like, okay, if I don't hear back from you, you're not going to be reappointed. And then, they're coming in later. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't hear from you. So I think if you tell them you're stuck on here until you resign, sort of, then you're going to get back if they don't want to be on it. But I guess you could look at it both ways.
Yeah. I kind of answer back to or ask back to Jeff, what do you do in that case when you get somebody who on what, at first understanding that they really don't care. Like they're just like, yeah, I was losing interest anyway. But then that situation happens where they're like, oh, I didn't get back to you. I mean, I know that does happen more than once, and more than just once or twice. But so what becomes the more effective way for this single point of reappointment notification? What works better for us, letting them drop off or an enduring appointment? Because I don't know. I don't know the answer to this.
Mr. Chair,
Yep, go ahead, Tim.
as I read through this one, I was conflicted, and as I got into the subsection 1 underneath item 10, I had the same concern. You know, unless we hear back from you with a resignation, we'll assume your continued interest. No, I think we need to hold them a little bit accountable and responsible. If they want the job, they'll tell us they want the job. If they don't want the job, okay, I can accept it. Thank you for your service. Appreciate what you did. But I think it's kind of the double-edged sword. If you want to do this, I need to kind of know you want to do this or you want to continue to do this. Just my 2 cents.
All right, not hearing anything else from the board. I think we're gonna pass on this one right now, Adam, if we want to move to the next one.
Okay, we will pass on that one too. We'll keep the budget workshop. I just wanted to vent about that.
Okay. This one caught me off guard. I don't recommend that we get rid of this one. I think I see a lot of usefulness in them. I've been a participant from the advisory committee and the select board. I think there's value in it. I understand, Adam, the frustration that not everybody is on board with it. Honestly, I think they're in the minority. I think that people do get a lot of, especially for freshman selectmen who are or select board members who have not done this before, and they wind up trying to interact and understand how this thing works together. That is the crucible. That day is the crucible by which you get good select board members, and they understand the process. They understand the crosstalk. They understand. Remember, it's a joint session as well, so the advisory committee may have a fundamental difference of opinion on some of the things, and it's a very dynamic environment where you, as the CFO for the town, you're able to make on the spot decisions based on that feedback. I think that the budget workshop is a great tool. That was certainly something, we used to have a marathon of nights, as I understand in the past. I think that we moved to a single day and then a snow day if we needed it. I think this is a win for us. I would recommend that we keep this. I defer the rest of my time to the board. Terry, your hand's up.
Absolutely. I can tell you right now that sitting on capital planning as a selectman, I made a conscious decision. Okay, I'm going to let this slide through capital planning, but when it comes around to the select board, I definitely have certain opinions that as a selectman, I would like to be able to discuss.
Well, that's why I think because the language said workshop, so that's why it was struck. But I think as long as we come back and make the revisions to get rid of workshops and keep the budget workshop, I think that will be the best solution.
Yeah, I mean, we're only answering as you had it on that paper. So we're, from Terry and my point of view so far, it's just addressing that singular workshop.
And I think just when Holly was going through it, that's how she was looking at it. Anything that said workshop, she struck. But then once I reviewed and pondered it, I was just, my frustration comes more from the standpoint of not everybody participating, but yet when the department heads are there and you could ask them a question, you choose not to, and then inundate the town administrator's office with all these questions. That's where I was.
Especially if you have a schedule. So if people are tuning into that day long, that marathon joint session, if we have a published schedule, people are able to tune in for what they need to. Yeah, it's a long day for everybody, for both the committee and the board. But it's when we move to an omnibus, we still have the function of doing the line by line by going through it this way. And I think it's actually worked very well to the advantage of the town to do it this way. So I vote that we keep it, but or give you the indication that we keep it, but that's just me and Terry so far.
I would agree with both of you. I think you should keep it.
Thank you, Julie.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Jeff.
again, this is accountability and transparency in taxpayer dollars. It's one meeting. So now the department heads have 5 extra meetings to go to a year. And I was looking at the schedule that we had for last year, for February. We started at 8:30. But if you're not scheduled to make your presentation till, say, 12:30, department doesn't have to be there at 8:30. You know, you can come walking in at 11:30, quarter to 12 or so, 12 o'clock even. And if we happen to be really on, speed mode and we got to you and you weren't there because we're so far ahead, then when you do come in, it's just like, okay, you're next. And it gives departments a chance to justify to not only the policy and decision makers, the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator, but mainly to the Board of Selectmen, well, what are you doing? What do you want to do with this money? What are your plans? Justify to the taxpayers why they should give you, I don't know, $1 million, 100,000, 10,000. Again, it's transparency and it's accountability. It's one day. It's a long day, but department heads don't have to sit there for the whole day. Selectmen, the town administrator, members of the advisory committee that come, we're the ones that will be there all day. Again, as you pointed out, it's informative. It's justifying what they want to do for the year. It's not only, how much money, but what are you going to do with that money? Why do you need that money? What can the residents expect to get back for your money? And maybe, if we get back to it, we can, meet in real time together. If somebody wants to come and, ask a question, hey, what are you doing with the roads? You're buying this new truck. How is that going to help get my road, that's a mess? It's just, it's the department head's chance to make their case to the town of not only how much money they spend, but how and what they spend it on and what the residents get. I would think they should be climbing over the fence to try to get here to tell people this is why, my department gets this amount of money, why I need this amount of money. Mm-hmm. It's to me, it's a no-brainer to have this and to keep going.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, for item number 6, if there's nothing else on that one, we would ask that you keep the budget, the singular day budget workshop. Moving on to item 7, Adam.
I'll leave this one to Holly. Next couple. She takes on the clerk responsibility.
Yeah, I think based on number 1, we could probably skip over number 8. Otherwise, we're still on 7 and have a couple more to go. So we're on the requirement for approved minutes.
Yeah, this is
Adam or Holly.
This is more because she handles this aspect of it, putting the minutes up and everything. Holly, you there?
Yep. So this one, open meeting law requires that we have the draft minutes up. I believe it's within 10 days. That's what our policy has. I try to get them up as soon as possible, the draft minutes. And then when they're approved, in the policy here, it says that we need to put the approved minutes up as well, whether it's replacing the other ones or adding. That's duplicated efforts and a lot of time. With those approved minutes, I have the clerk sign them, and they're in a notebook, and once the notebook's full, it goes into the town clerk's office. So I just asked that we remove that so I don't have to do both. It's not a lot of time, but again, it's another 5 minutes that could be used for something else.
I agree with number 7. Further comment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yep. Go ahead, Jeff.
to the best of my knowledge, and I have the open meeting law and Code of Mass Regulations concerning minutes in front of me. Draft minutes and the 10 days. 10 days is when you request the public record, you have to get a response within 10 days. And if someone's sitting at a selectmen's meeting and they ask for a copy of the minutes, you're not supposed to tell them, well, we haven't approved them. You give them draft minutes and they are marked draft as a public record. Back in 2017, there was a change to the open meeting law that boards of selectmen now have to have approved meeting minutes within either the next 3 meetings or 30 days, whichever is later. If approval takes longer, you'll have to demonstrate to the Attorney General what that cause was. So we have to have approved minutes, and they have to have certain things in them. And again, this is accountability and transparency to the people that matter the most, the people who pay the bills. We also have a town website that back in 2004, town meeting voted to create it, to fund it for town business. The fiscal 21 budget, it has the town website annual fee, $2,500. A domain name for that website, $450. So it's why we have the draft minutes available for, the public to have in case, somebody says, I want a copy of them minutes like now. Well, we're not voted on, but I want them. So, okay, they're draft minutes. There might be mistakes in them. Okay, no problem. So that's the requirement of minutes. We have to approve them. The town has voted, the Board of Selectmen had brought that forward, that we will have a town website and we will put minutes on it. Do all boards, committees, and everything put their minutes up on the website in a timely manner? No. There are a lot of things on the town website that are not updated, not maintained, not working. I think we should be addressing those things, seeing how town meeting is paying for it, before, again, we take the easy route. If it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes. We have to approve the minutes. It's a service to the townspeople, so they can get have a record of what their Board of Selectmen are doing. And not only that, there are other boards and committees, but this is about the Selectmen's policy. And we should be setting the example for the rest of the town's boards, committees, commissions, etc., that we will approve minutes. We will put those approved minutes up on the website as soon as possible, as well as, on my town government. It seems like we just, in the name of efficiency, we want to do less and less and less and put less information out there, when we're spending money on something where we can put more information out to more people so they don't have to call up the records retention officer, Adam, and hey, I want a set of approved minutes for the Board of Selectmen for, their last meeting. And, how many emails does he want to answer? Where you could just go to the website and boom, print them out. Now, there are a few people who they don't do internet. There are residents in town that do not do internet, don't have a computer. There's one lady, she has stated that at several selectmen's meetings. So if they want minutes, well, you'll have to print them out and give them to them. But for most people, they can just go to the website and boom, they're right there. I mean, technically, we don't even need them printed out, other than, a copy to somebody to sign. But that's how I feel on that. There's a requirement that we have to approve minutes, and the approved minutes should be posted, should be available to the townspeople or anybody else who wants to see them. They pay for a website. We're mandated to have approved minutes. Take a few minutes and put them out there so people can see them. That's my, dime's worth maybe.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Go ahead, Julie.
Actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Holly. I don't think you're asking us not to post meeting minutes, correct?
I'm asking not to put the approved signed minutes up on the website, because that means me scanning them in and adding them on there when there's already a draft minutes that are probably almost exactly the same as what the approved ones are going to be, with a few exceptions. And those are always available in the town clerk's office as soon as they're signed.
Correct. So basically, you're only asking us to put up one set instead of two.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking, because after Jeff's little chat, Jeff's thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, that we should be automatically always putting them up. We always have. We always will. We're not being asked not to put them on the website. They're being put on the website. She just doesn't want to put them on the website twice. And I agree with her on the majority of the meeting minutes. If there's any change after we sign, it's usually a spelling error or something small. It's not anything significant that has to change the whole group of meeting minutes. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's a big deal. Put them up once. That's my thought.
Mr. Chairman.
Rebuttal.
Why are we posting draft minutes and then posting approved? If you only want to put one set minutes, wait and just put the approved minutes up there, the ones that matter.
I'd be fine with that.
Because if there's an error and, then, okay, they're on file in the clerk's office. So now you got people calling up the town clerk. I want a copy of approved minutes. I don't want the draft minutes. I want the approved minutes.
Because they're supposed to be up there within 10 days.
Where's that regulation coming from? That they have to be posted?
I think
draft
that's just in our
minutes have
policy.
to be posted in 10 days?
I think that's just in this policy somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, so draft minutes shall be so watermarked and be posted upon the town's website within 10 days of the meeting and thereafter placed upon the next regular business meeting of the board for their approval. That's section 13 or number 13.
Just change that.
Terry, you had something?
So what I'm hearing, the difference is what Holly's saying, the difference is one is got a watermark draft and the other one has our official signatures. And I'm wondering if a compromise might not be as well, or might work, is that she could just send a blurb, these minutes were approved at such and such a meeting. These draft minutes were approved on, and what day they were approved on, rather than have to scan in the documents with the signatures. she could just put in these minutes were voted and approved on and what date they were voted and approved on.
That would be pretty much the same as
Got
when I finalize it, I put when they were approved. So it'd be about the same amount of work. What Jeff suggested would work as well if we wanted to just scrap the original draft minutes going up within 10 days instead and do the final minutes that are signed. That would be the same effect, just putting one up.
Yeah, looking for the draft minutes within 10 days. In my mind, if people are looking for that because they missed something or otherwise, I guess the redundancy that we have is all our meetings are recorded. So you could wind up, what did they say? Or, what did I miss? What went on with that? I'd be, if the goal is to get them up, I agree with Jeff and Julie that the approved minutes, those are the ones that get posted because they have a signature and they're the final approved minutes. That makes sense to me. Terry, did you still have something?
Nope.
Okay.
That sounds makes sense to me too.
Yeah, I would just want to make sure when we're putting the minutes up, the link is actually a correct link. As I was preparing for this week, I was looking backwards for a couple of different things. And as I clicked on both draft or final minutes, it was taking me to the upcoming calendar. So the link wasn't quite set correctly. And at least it took me somewhere. I didn't get the 404 error, page not found, or misdirect me to the defunct website, which has happened quite a bit as well.
Yep.
And it's just one of those things, again, the accountability. And if the citizens are looking for it, I can certainly appreciate the frustration because I know the frustrations I was going through. And I says, oh, darn it, I know they're here, but now how do I get to them?
We deal with that constantly. Holly sends off to the webmaster. I've sent her numerous broken links, and just a matter of something happened with when the website moved over, and it's a constant battle. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So I think the consensus that you're getting, Adam and Holly, is that we're okay with a rewrite of item 13. Well, in the actual thing, it's minutes of the meeting. If you want to rewrite that, where the approved minutes get posted. Okay. Okay. Moving on. I think we can skip over 8 because of number 1.
Are we proceeding forward with that one, if I remember correctly, or are we not?
I have in my notes for the meeting as we go through that the consensus of the board is that we keep the clerk position.
The clerk on the board, right?
That is correct.
I think 8 and 9 were also related to the same thing.
Yeah.
8 and 9? Okay.
Yeah. And then also 11.
Yep.
So on 10 was just the thing about the annual survey.
I had a question on the clerk thing. Is it, could you still have a clerk but change the duties?
I mean, we were looking at it from the standpoint that Holly's basically does the minutes right now and keeps all that, and it would just be smoother if it was placing her in that capacity, but the board wants to do it the other way.
How could we word it to keep a clerk for as far as line of succession, change the duties of the clerk, but because I do think Holly does an amazing job with the minutes and posting meetings and scheduling, and she should be recognized for that, and then maybe just change the clerk's position as a position of succession in case the chair and the vice chair weren't available.
Well, and I think
Is that a possibility, or is that making sense to anybody?
Well, Holly wanted to be the clerk. So I think that's where the board seems they want to have their own clerk. But Holly's like the unofficial clerk. So that's where, I mean, the succession of duties of what you're saying.
We just need to specify. I think it's important to specify, but I go back to the way that Jeff described, you know, the responsibility of the board of the select board, and we retain that by having a clerk that signs for that. And there's times when we say, oh, we need one signature for that. Well, it should be the clerk then, unless it has to be the chair or someone specifically. I think denoting the duties is important, so it's not just a catch-all. Like when we say clerk, that it's not just going to be everything that's administrative in nature that we wind up specifying.
I had put on the minutes after noticing for a while that it looked funny with putting Julie's name with clerk and then I'm submitting the minutes. It seemed confusing. So I started putting recording clerk under my name. So it cleared. It's sort of a split of the duties where I do the recording and minutes and she does the signature and the official documents that the clerk would have to sign for the board.
Well, why wouldn't
we just put
for the things that you're doing where you're signing for that, why wouldn't we just put your official title on there and put executive assistant?
Yeah, we could do that.
I mean, when people call when we all kind of share that office area, you know, like that's known as it's the town administrator, but it's also the select board. It's like, the just the executive section of the town. If you're signing that, the work is being done like that, then it should be your signature block on there, in my mind.
Right, and it gives clarity to anyone else who's nominated for the clerk position, the duties required of them. Because right now, I mean, it's listed as those duties, but is it really being followed through? So it should be worded differently so that the next person that may or may not accept the position would understand this is what they're getting into.
Right.
And again, I give Holly credit for she does an excellent job at condensing the conversation. And Mike, you even pointed out that if you're on a board and you're expected to take minutes, then how do you participate as a select board member and take minutes at the same time? I mean, it's not that I'm trying to shirk my duties or shirk the clerk's duties, Jeff, or again, take less, make it easier, what have you. It's that, people are limited in their capacity to do things naturally, unless you get some person that signs up to be on the board that happens to be an administrative professional in real life and can do the job efficiently. For the average person like me, I would have to really think hard how it would really just be.
You'd have to watch the recording.
Oh my God, I would. How do you just condense things? I would like to put everything in, so kudos to Holly. Let's streamline the wording and move on.
Well, and that's why I decided to bring this forward with Holly's suggestions, because we're just trying to look at ways where we could discuss some things that we saw that seem like, maybe we should bring this forward and discuss it, to have that open dialogue. The board's the policy-making body, and quite frankly, I didn't want to be able to say no and make that decision. I want to leave that up to the board to decide where they want to go with policy. Personally, I like the going back to the budget process that we have. I just get frustrated on other aspects. So at least we're clearing things up and we're having that discussion.
Okay.
Now, are we all set with the last one?
How did we decide to word it? How do we decide to leave
Well,
it?
Holly and I will go back and go through some of the sections that the board wants to proceed forward with. We just came in with all this stuff, and that way we could say, "Oh, you said we don't want to do this. Okay, we'll take that one off, and we'll focus on the areas where we could improve the document policy."
Okay. I think that Adam and Holly have where we are on clerk versus any other duties that needs to be specified elsewhere. So the only thing that we have left to discuss this evening is the survey recommendation.
Yeah, the survey. I actually just dealt with this. So Carol comes in and says, I got to do the census, the annual census, and I need to get a survey from you. And I'm like, survey? So I went back and I watched the meeting from when this was first implemented. And unfortunately, there wasn't really any discussion. It was just kind of a vote to implement it. And I'm like, okay, I'll put together a survey. So Holly and I, Holly was able to get it in there, but basically it was more of in the sense of it wasn't clear in the policy. And I just kind of came up with this whole volunteer thing with Holly where people can participate, but I guess we're not even really getting that good of a response. I mean, it just went out. So I think having a policy for the sake of a policy is a thing of, I mean, I don't know the intention of and where it came from, but it's not specific either. And quite frankly, I mean, I have problems with policy that's not kind of directing me where to go. It's kind of like, well, do a survey. Okay, great. What kind of survey? So we came up with something just because the policy said to do that, and it took us away from doing the other functions of our jobs. But
well, maybe it should be more of a board responsibility than us throwing it back to your office. In the recommendation, it says, it seems like a task that does not get enough results for the time and resources put into it. Can you speak briefly about what other time and resources put into a survey? And then I want to go back to my original point.
Going back, me researching it. Why was this adopted? It was just voted on and it was adopted. There's no discussion specifically related to the policy itself. The time to come up with what to put in this. We did it. We followed the policy, but I guess having a clear direction on what the intent is of a policy. Otherwise, it's just a paper tiger. I mean, its purpose, I think, is probably a good thing. But Holly, if you want to speak to the amount of time you spent on it, because I know you had that thing where people could scan their phone to it, and talk about the time you spent to put this together.
Yeah, that's all I want to know. What does it mean, time and resources? How much are you putting into it?
I would estimate, after we figured out what it was supposed to be about, basically getting people to volunteer, getting to the committee interest forum and volunteering for committees. It was creating the form and getting it out there. It's not, again, a lot of time, probably about 15, 20 minutes. Now that I've mastered creating forms, it's a lot quicker. And then just getting it out there. We had to print them out for Carol. She mails them out with the census. So there was some time with that. Call it an hour total.
That's
how about this? I know. I mean, I already saw the hand and arm signals from one of my colleagues, but how about this? Number one, I would say, so I think that I own this. Like we have our retreat and otherwise. And I'm looking at the first line there. The board recognizes the board recognizes that it both represents and is accountable to the citizens of town. It is the board's policy to make every effort for transparency in its decision-making process and administration of the government and to strengthen communications with the citizens. So number 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's fine. As far as your recommendation for a survey, I'd submit this to you. make the chair responsible for developing I don't know how I would say it, but I would say rather than us, the select board trying to play 20 questions with the community and then throw that onto the administrative staff, I think that I should own that to say, how are we doing? That's what I read in that first 2 lines there. I don't know how I would do that. I mean, obviously, I've said before that I can do the technical stuff, and whether it's a Survey Monkey or the methods that you used, Holly. But I would like to have a mechanism by which we can test that. And I do agree with 2, 3, 4, and 5. Either we do away with it, or we reword it so that it becomes the responsibility of the board. And I'd even further submit to you the chair. That ties into the state of the state of the town that we do. It ties into our retreat and select board goals. So I'd say to my board, either we eliminate it and agree with the recommendation, or we rewrite that number 1 where it becomes our tool, the 5 of us tool, to figure out how are we doing. I don't know if it would become the same thing, but I would say at least the chair would be responsible for it.
I'd be
What thoughts do you have?
I'd be interested. I mean, could we be creative with what, are you saying we could be creative? I mean, right now it looks like they just take a survey of who's interested in volunteering, right? But could we be creative and take on surveys that would help guide us if the public is interested by the responses?
I would use what we already had. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would use already what we had. I basically take our select board goals, turn it around, put like a degree of 1 through 5 and say, here's your survey. And, this is basically a direct connection to what we said as a group we would do as a select board. Now, I'd love to have the feedback to say, do you think that we did that? Like Ab and I do high fives all along the year to say, hey, we got another one. We knocked down another select board goal. That's just one of the ideas that I would have. But again, I say to you guys, I have some pretty good understanding for how we might measure that, select board goals being one of them. But I'm saying I as the chair would wind up saying, I'll help guide that.
I'm interested.
Mike, so are you saying you'd like us to reword that? Annually, the select board will come up with a survey, and if you do that, do you want to have the town clerk send it out with the census? Or send a link out for it?
Yeah, I would say that it becomes the select board. It's like the board policy to make every effort for transparency. Well, okay, fine. I'm not going to make you guys do that. The board recognizes that it both represents and is accountable to citizens. Well, this is a way that we can actually do it.
That's why, it just says in there, and if after reviewing, I'm sure you see, and that's where we focus the survey on areas of interest in town government and their willingness to serve on town committees. That's where it says it specifically, right?
I would change that. I would wind up having a different mechanism, as I'm brainstorming some stuff out there.
But you can understand the confusion when we're reading this, and then I go back and I want to see the various matters.
I concur with Jeff that as it's written, I think we could strike that whole thing. But what I'm saying is I don't see another method for feedback for us. We do have other measures, and I take that back. I'm looking at number 5. Every citizen will be afforded the opportunity to address the board during its meetings. This just becomes a more number 1, as I'm proposing it, again, taking on that work to say, here becomes a quantitative method rather than just someone attacking you online saying, I think you suck and you can't do your job.
So you're asking to change the purpose of it from volunteerism to actually critiquing each one of us, because as a water safety instructor, that was every night I had to go home and think, how did I do today? How did my staff do today? And I welcomed feedback on how can I make this better for the kids? How can I make this safer for my volunteers? How can I include more people? You know, how can I make this fun, inclusive, streamlined, you know, and that's a good thing.
So I would rewrite it. I would say annually, the select board chair with input of the board would solicit via, survey, citizen survey, electronic citizen survey on matters pertaining to the select board goals, something like that. But you see how I'm switching that. I'm basically taking it away. I'm rewriting it and saying it's a tool of the select board to be able to have a quantitative feedback method.
And could we also include the annual survey and try to encourage people to volunteer so that we would get, instead of Holly getting the volunteer things, we would get them. You know how they fill out their volunteer interests, right? They want.
I don't think you need to specify it. I think you can put it in there, but you don't need to specify it in there. Does that make sense? Or you guys can tell me I'm all, completely off my rocker and say, let's just cut it and move on.
You're changing the nature of what they're asking is, to my knowledge, to what I'm hearing is they're saying these are the parameters of the survey, and it has to do with what Adam was just reading about the volunteering. But you want to take it and make it more personal to the select board. Can we, eliminate one and create another one is what I'm thinking.
So you would add that in. So, where it's querying their willingness, I said, you line up your goals, you have a 1 through 5, do you think that they achieved it? Strongly disagree, strongly agree. Is this an area that you would be willing to volunteer for? And there's a check marker on that. Remember, these surveys, they're anonymous, are they not, Holly?
You can put your email in, but you don't have to. So generally they're anonymous.
You just add into that form whether they'd be willing to serve on, for every issue that you're basically asking them to grade the town or the select board. I guess the core thing is, do you want any kind of survey? If you don't, we strike that whole thing. If you do, I would say that rather than burden our administrative staff with setting that up, I think the select board should be able to at least come up with the design. We're still going to need Holly and her IT skills to basically put it up there, whether we're using SurveyMonkey or something else. But, the question is, do you want a survey for your use? Yep, go ahead, Julie.
I think it's a great tool. I think that the board should take over, and I think that the chairman, I think what you're saying, Mike, makes a lot of sense. And I honestly feel, knowing that I would rather see the survey come back to us, that we can look at how the voters feel about the people that they voted in and how they're doing with their position on the Board of Selectmen. I think it's a no-brainer that the Board of Selectmen should be doing this and not Holly.
Or the administrator, as it specifies right now.
Right, or the administrator, correct.
Yep.
I mean, this kind of just caught me off guard. That's why when Carol came in and says I'm sending out.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'm over here trying to research what it's about, and it's not clear outside of willingness to serve. And that's what we did. We sent out one specific to that.
Well, imagine you're at the retreat and you're using that last survey and you're basically judging, if you're going through each one of them and the town is like, yeah, you got that completely wrong. You have consistently, strongly disagree or something like that with the Veterans Park, then we know what we can spend some time on. And Terry, if you wind up having that check mark, do you want to volunteer for this? If there's a way that Holly can tie that to say, if they did put their email address in and they did check mark that they were willing to serve, that allows us to be able to have that two-way feedback to say, great, we wondered if you could volunteer for the Veterans Park or otherwise, because you thought we did well or you thought we did a horrible job.
And it opens up the potential for forming new committees that people might jump at the chance because they're interested and it's in their wheelhouse.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Ideal.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Go ahead, Tim.
To that end, yes, I agree. This is something we as the board should own. We're the elected officials. At the end of the day, it lands on our shoulders squarely. I don't believe a survey needs to be repetitive year to year to year. Many organizations I've belonged to over the years and I'm currently involved with, surveys come out on a timely basis. Mm-hmm. Something has a change, we hit the memberships with a survey. What's your feeling on this? What are we doing great? What should we change? What might we think about changing? Should we scrap this all together and go in a different direction? And that's how we get an idea how to keep the organizations afloat. Just my 2 cents on this topic, but yep. Yeah, it's ours.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. I mean, the more that we talk about it, the more I'm kind of shaping how we could make this a good thing. All right, Jeff, what are we doing? Get rid of it? Give it to me to play with?
I'm probably in the minority, but if you want to have a survey and you want to create one, do a survey on parking in the library and the common.
Okay.
Cutting parking into the common area in front of the library and see what townspeople say before we go too far and put too much into that. Hear what they have to say.
So Holly, I think moving forward, whoever, I think that you and I could work out a systematic way to do that, whether it's like a near-term survey or the one that we're talking about from an annual perspective. But like Tim said, making sure that it's not this boilerplate, same thing where they wind up seeing it every year and you don't get participation. So we'll rewrite this. The chair will own it, and I'll work with you to figure out a way where it's not, I said I'd own it, but I wind up just giving everything to you.
Now, so the language there says various matters. Are you striking the language for the volunteerism within that? Or are you? No,
I'll restructure it. I mean, I think you can include willingness to serve. You can kind of include that, and we can figure out how we're going to ultimately achieve that. But that's such a nefarious way to say it. Various matters. All we're doing is querying the efficacy, the good or the bad job that the select board is doing. What are the concerns of the community in the administration of their government? So whether it says various matters and willingness to serve, you can keep those things in there. We're basically saying, yeah, we're just changing the ownership of this and the scope and purpose.
So, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, for clarity, considering what Select Board Member Bennett just proposed as far as the parking on the common, it says annual survey. Can we strike
or as needed?
As needed instead of taking instead of annual. Good. So as needed surveys.
Annual or as needed.
I appreciate that.
Good idea.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please, Holly, go ahead.
With all the back and forth on this, can I make a suggestion that the board just strike the whole thing out of the policy and then just create the surveys as you want without having parameters to go by? And we could always take that and ask Carol to put it on the census and mail it out.
Yep.
And we could do these, throughout the year whenever you wanted to, without having a policy on it.
Yeah, and that's where I find troublesome is we have policy, but the point of policy is to uphold it, and we have all these policies and we're missing some things here and there. I get to the paper tiger.
Okay. Sold. You had me at Jeff's head nod.
That's why we're bringing all these to you, whether you like the additions, didn't like them. We still have.
I still think it's going to be a good idea, but we don't need to policy the crap out of it. So I'll still think of it.
So we could strike it?
Yep.
Great.
All right, we got to the end of our workshop, and good workshop. A lot of good stuff. Let's see, COVID-wise, everybody, I think we're about just under 50. I think the last report was 47. It's rising and falling. We had a lot of holidays. The vaccination plan will be regional, just to let you know. It's going to be out of the Gardner High School, is what Lori is telling me. They've already started asking our CERT team. They've asked our emergency management director for pledging not the entire CERT team, but what is the willingness for our CERT team to help out with that. Our emergency first responders, Tim, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Our emergency responders are already being trained to administer vaccines, to be a part of that force.
I don't believe that's a true statement, sir. There's discussion, but I don't think the training has begun.
Okay, it hasn't happened. All right. Okay, it's a
There
possibility.
there is language.
The military as well. Yep.
Yep, there is language from the Department of Public Health, but there are a bunch of steps that have to be completed prior to.
All right, great. Thank you for throttling me in on that one.
No, not a problem.
And then the last item that as far as the COVID update, Rich Curtis told me that there is emergency food assistance now available, and our emergency management team and our public health team are coordinating. So if we get any kind of notification of positive COVID tests, if those people need food assistance, that the health department is going to make sure that they are coordinating for that. That means if someone becomes quarantined and they can't get out of their house or have no means to get food, the state has made that available, and health department and EMD are working on that. Other than that, folks, I had nothing else this evening.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, go ahead, Jeff.
Before we go, I'll just update you that since we're in violation of the open meeting law right now, we should probably fix this. This is from a 2017 that updates to the open meeting law, and it's 940 Code of Mass Regulations 29.3, notice of posting requirements, and this would be in yours and Adam's wheelhouse.
Okay.
Although we have designated a website for the posting of town business, including our meetings, the law is the notice, the designation of the website as the official posting location must be posted on or adjacent to the city or town hall with instructions as to how to locate the website. Copies of posted meeting notices must be accessible at the clerk's office during normal business hours. I went by there today, and on the bulletin board or on the door at the handicap access, no such notice exists. That's something that should get fixed, like yesterday.
See me pointing at you, don't you? Get on it, Adam. Can I ask you to do that, Adam?
Yeah, just forward that over to me. Yeah.
Yep.
And I will be emailing Holly as soon as we're done here, a list of links that do not work on templetonmass.gov. The personnel policy, it says you got to log in, but if you go to templeton1.org, it opens right up. Computers are great, ain't they?
Holly, is that helpful if people email you to let you know when we find these? I know Tim talked about it a little bit earlier. Is it helpful, or is there a method to the madness?
Well, there is, I can get a broken link report on there. It's just finding the time to get it and go through and fix them.
All right.
So,
Adam, what is the cycle for our internships? Is that something that we can possibly use an internship for, to do an audit on, get an IT student? Let's think on that. Go back and talk about that. That may be a helpful thing. Like Hannah was, huge. I'm thinking of the wrong person. Margaret's daughter, when she came in and did a lot of the intern work, that was an amazing amount of work. So maybe that's something that we could try and tie into that. So thank you, Jeff and Tim, for pointing those links out. Holly, we'll get to them when we can. And then let's fix those open meeting law violations and make sure that we have those notices posted. All set, everyone? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. On the motion that has been seconded to adjourn, how do you vote? Jeff?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Julie? Terry?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 9:06 p.m. I'm going to go watch the news.
Drinking time. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Hey.
All right, good
Adam.
night.
Adam.